Everyone loves a bargain, but the truth is, buying cheap might be the single biggest mistake keeping you broke. You walk into a store, planning to spend maybe $10, you leave with 5 things: a $3 charger, a $5 t-shirt, a $2 kitchen tool you didn't even know existed 10 minutes ago. And the whole time, your brain is telling you the same comforting lie: relax, it's cheap. But here's the uncomfortable question: if cheap things save money, why do the people who buy the most cheap things almost always stay broke? And why do people who seem expensive with their purchases often end up with more money in the long run? Here's the thing: cheap things aren't saving you money. In many cases, they're quietly making you poorer, and once you see the math behind it, you won't look at cheap the same way ever again. My name is Nico, and I spend way too much time thinking about the weird psychology behind money. If you're someone who works hard, tries to save, but somehow still feels like money disappears faster than it should, hit subscribe and give this video a thumbs up, because today we're breaking down one of the most misunderstood money traps on the planet: why cheap things often cost you the most. Now look, let's start with a simple example. Imagine you need a pair of shoes. You go online and see 2 options. One pair costs $30, the other pair costs $120. Most people instantly choose the $30 pair because in their mind they just saved $90. But here's what most people don't realize: the $30 pair lasts maybe 6 months. The $120 pair lasts 4 years. So let's do the math. If you buy the cheap pair every 6 months, that's 2 pairs per year. $30 times 2 equals $60 a year. Over 4 years, you spend $240. Meanwhile, the expensive pair cost $120 once, half the cost. This idea is so common, economists actually gave it a name: the Boots theory of economic unfairness, which basically says poor people often pay more over time because they're forced to buy cheaper products repeatedly instead of investing in durable ones. And this isn't just theory. A 2022 consumer durability study from the International Journal of Consumer Studies found that low-cost household items fail 2.7 times faster than mid-range products on average. So cheap products don't just break faster, they multiply your spending. But the real problem isn't the products, it's the psychology. Because when something is cheap, your brain turns off its decision-making system. You stop asking the most important question in personal finance: how long will this actually last? Instead, you ask, how little can I spend right now? And that mindset spreads everywhere. Cheap phone chargers, cheap headphones, cheap kitchen tools, cheap furniture, cheap clothes, cheap electronics. Individually, they seem harmless, but together they create something dangerous: financial leakage. Small amounts of money escaping constantly without you noticing. Here's what most people don't realize: the average American household spends about $1,500 a year replacing broken low-cost items, according to research by the Consumer Product Safety Commission. Things like chargers, cables, shoes, kitchen appliances, headphones, small electronics, stuff that keeps breaking. Stuff that seemed cheap. Now you might be thinking, okay, but Nico, sometimes cheap is all I can afford. And you're right. This isn't about shaming cheap purchases. This is about understanding when cheap becomes expensive, because there's a difference between cheap price and cheap value. Cheap price is paying less today. Cheap value is paying more over time, and companies know this. In fact, entire industries are built around something called planned obsolescence, which basically means products are designed to break faster. Now look, back in the 1980s, the average refrigerator lasted about 19 years. Today, the average lifespan is closer to 9 to 13 years. Washing machines used to last 14 years. Now many fail in 7 to 8. Cheap electronics sometimes last less than 2. Why? Because if products lasted forever, companies would run out of customers. So instead, they sell you things that feel affordable but require constant replacement. And this is where it gets interesting, because cheap purchases don't just cost you money. They cost something even more valuable: your attention. Every time something breaks, you have to research a replacement, drive to the store, compare options, spend mental energy deciding again. A Harvard Business Review analysis estimated the average person spends over 200 hours in their lifetime replacing low-quality items. That's 5 full work weeks gone just because something broke. But the biggest hidden cost of cheap things is something almost nobody talks about. They normalize low standards. When you constantly buy things that break, tear, fade, or stop working, you slowly start expecting things to fail. And that mindset can leak into bigger financial decisions: cheap investments, cheap shortcuts, cheap career decisions, cheap habits. Because when your brain learns temporary is normal, long-term thinking disappears, and long-term thinking is where wealth actually comes from. Now here's the surprising twist: rich people don't avoid cheap things, they avoid replacing things. They buy fewer items, but they buy things that last. This is called the cost per use rule. Instead of asking, what does it cost? They ask, how much does it cost every time I use it? Let's say you buy a $120 jacket. You wear it 200 times. That's 60 cents per use. Meanwhile, a $30 jacket worn 20 times before falling apart costs $1.50 per use, more than double, same product category, completely different value. And once you start thinking this way, your spending habits change instantly. You stop chasing cheap, you start chasing durability. Now you might be thinking, okay, Nico, so should I just buy expensive stuff now? No. Because expensive doesn't automatically mean high quality. There's a better rule. Buy cheap things for temporary needs. Buy quality things for daily use if you use something every day. Phone charger, mattress, shoes, office chair, headphones, kitchen knife. Those are the items where cheap becomes expensive the fastest, but if something is occasional, a tool you'll use twice a year, a costume for an event, a temporary item, cheap is completely fine. So here's the simple shift that can change how you spend money forever. Before buying anything, ask one question: will I replace this? If the answer is yes, cheap might actually be the most expensive choice. And here's the ironic part. Once you start buying fewer but better things, your total spending usually drops. Your house feels slower, your replacements disappear, your decisions become easier, and suddenly, your money starts staying where it belongs, in your bank account. Because wealth isn't built by buying the cheapest things, it's built by buying the right things once. And that small mental shift might save you thousands of dollars over the next decade. But the truth is, cheap things are only one of the silent money traps people fall into. There are actually dozens of everyday purchases that feel harmless but quietly drain thousands of dollars every year. And once you see them, you'll never look at spending the same way again. So if you found this useful, subscribe for more, because Nico will see you in the next one.